can just start the combo.
That's great. Can we take a few deep breaths together before we start?
Yes. Oh,
Good.
thank you for saying that.
Let's just take 3 deep breaths.
Okay.
So we sit nice and tall, feel our feet on the floor, long spine, relaxed shoulders. Let's take a deep breath into our bodies. And release the breath out. Again, take a nice deep breath in. And allow the air and the breath to leave you. With this last breath, just place your hand on your heart. Let's take another breath together. And release it out. Beautiful.
Okay, thank you for grounding me.
Me too.
So much
Thank you.
better.
Yeah, me too. It's great. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for being here, Stephen. And
Thank you so much for asking me.
Oh my God, I feel like I have been asking to be kind of connected and matched up with my people, like with the right people, the right kind of flow and vibration. And then you came up for me, and it just feels really right. And even just right now, the way you're like, okay, Paris, let's just ground ourselves before we get started. I'm like, okay, like 3 breaths, but there is something in your presence that is really calming and really, I just feel like you're so aligned with whatever is going on in life. And I know that you've gone through really hard times lately, but you're able to hold your ground and be so aligned and stable and connected. And that is, I'm so intrigued and excited to talk about that and see what you have to say about that. So here we are. I'm so excited to talk to Stephen today, our movement guru and recovery advocate. And I've looked into your website and your books and your YouTube channel. And it's just this grace about you and the way you move, the way you bring the healing into movements and into recovery. So I'm just wondering if we can start by maybe telling us a little bit about this beautiful Stephen and everything that he's gone through in his journey to get to this point of like being so grounded and present.
Thank you so much for the invitation to spend this time with you today, and for that beautiful introduction. My goodness. I receive everything that you just bestowed upon me. Appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's as we move through the world and we interact with one another, we have ideas about the people around us, things that we intuit, that we sense. And what you've sensed about me is this groundedness, this calm, this relaxed energy. And it's always interesting and wonderful to get some kind of feedback, because I'm just living my life. I'm just living my life, moving from moment to moment. All the things that you attach to me are certainly things that I feel, but you never know exactly how people receive that. And I think that what you sense about me is something that's always been a part of me. I think I've always been that person, that soul that people gravitated towards. And I think it is because of my gentle nature, my quiet my strength, my vulnerability, my sensitivity, my lightness, my levity, and just that creative fire that's in me and curiosity. I think people have always responded to that. And Stephen hasn't always appreciated all that, you know, because we have our moments when we don't necessarily see what other people see. We're thinking about, or we're distracted by other things. But at the core of us, we really know what the truth is. We know who we are. Once we peel back all the different many layers of the onion and peel back all the different pieces of armor that we put over ourselves. But yeah, I am who I am, and I love who I am at almost 52 years old. I can't even believe those words are coming out of my mouth, that number. It's like, I still feel like I'm 25 or 30, like, oh, but I would never want to live those times again, because I think those times were very special and very powerful. But I've moved past a lot of the lessons that I needed to learn at that young part of my life. And I'm just grateful for everything today. I've said this to a lot of different people that are close to me, that I've never felt quite as alive as I feel right now.
Wow.
And I think it has a lot to do with this process of healing trauma, really identifying depression that I've held for quite some time, but because I am such a functional person and I get stuff done, that I never fully understood that that's what I was dealing with. I knew something was slightly off, but I just thought if I did more Qigong, if I went to more recovery meetings, if I meditated more, if I ate this, if I didn't eat that, if I took this supplement, if I prayed, like all that, I thought all of that would fix that little part of me that's kind of like, something's not quite right there. But I think what it's taken is this relationship release to bring all of this up, to be looked at and to apply compassion to and self-love, and to be really proactive about taking care of what I need. What does Stephen need? When you remove everybody else out of the picture and it's just Stephen, what does Stephen need today? So all of this makes me feeling incredibly alive. Like, I'm doing this mindfulness meditation training program right now. And one of the questions that the facilitators asked last night was, what brings you into self-awareness? And that question, at first, I didn't know how to answer it. And it wasn't until one of my fellow cohorts said, oh, resistance is one thing that brings me into awareness. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's it. Because in this process of this year, especially around this relationship release and my resistance to what was, and this change and transformation that was happening, whether I was fully on board or not, coming up against that resistance made me very present to myself, how I felt in my body, what was happening in my heart, where my thoughts were at the moment and where they've been. And I think that happens for a lot of us, that we need that through challenges, we gain insights if we're willing to see, if we're willing to receive, if we're really willing to be open to that and to potentially change, because challenges change us. They can change us. They can transform us, like a river transforms stones as it washes over them over and over and over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. And so what I hear you say is that in this moment you feel the most alive than you have ever been. And it's through these challenges, and especially the latest relationship challenge, because you've had a lot of challenges. I feel like when I read your book, getting through that recovery and coming into yourself, and then now this relationship is just kind of, like you said, like a river going through and the stones and kind of shaping them and rebuilding them. And when you talk about that resistance, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like how did that show up in your relationship?
Resistance. Well, I think what comes to mind is sometimes we can be going about our life in a very practical, functional way. And there's something energetically that's off. Which can make you feel uncomfortable at times. You can have a thought of, what is that? How do I feel about that? How do I shift and change that? And when you have that kind of awareness, you're kind of faced with a choice of walking towards that or staying still or walking back. And I think for me, just feeling that there was things that were kind of amiss, and was I ready to look at that? Because if I looked at that, once you see something, you can't unsee it.
Right.
And while change can be beautiful and transformative, it's change and it's stressful. And is it more stressful to change, or is it more stressful to stay the same in this thing that's very familiar, that sometimes at some moments it feels like it's working, or working
familiar
enough. Yeah, it's familiar. Yeah. So that's the kind of resistance that I went up against, because it's one of those things where we all hear this a lot too, of like, things don't make us happy. Money doesn't make us happy. A beautiful home doesn't make us happy. Even love and adoration from people doesn't necessarily make us happy. Happiness is an inside job. That's one of the things I heard when I first entered recovery. People talked about how happiness is an inside job. But it's easy to project outwards and think that things are going to make you happy. But that's the thing for me. One of the things that became really clear is that, wow, I have this really beautiful life and I have all these things that are so positive that I'm so grateful for. And why is it that I don't feel as happy as I imagined I would feel? Like, what is that? And so I think it takes courage to look at that and to be open to asking that question of yourself and trying to figure that out. And it's been an incredible journey of understanding that and figuring that out taking actions to find that happiness that
Yeah.
I seek, that we seek. And happiness is such an elusive thing, right? It comes and it goes, and it's not always like I'm happy. Sometimes it's contentment, like I'm happy because I'm content
Mm-hmm.
with what is right now. That if I could change it, maybe I wouldn't change it because it's okay the way it is right now. And I feel a sense of comfort and ease. Yeah, I feel a
Yeah.
lot of contentment now, even as I move through this process of letting go and transformation and all that stuff. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, is it safe to say that in your relationship, in your past relationship, um, there were parts of you that kind of showed up that you acknowledged that they were there for the first time? Did it just show up through the relationship?
Hmm. Can you clarify that question?
I guess what I'm saying is, it seems like a lot of stuff for not just you, but like I've seen that for myself in my relationships, that things become more clear about parts of ourselves that we thought we had worked on. Like I thought I had done all this work and I was like the Buddha until I got into another relationship and I was like, oh my God, I'm like my own like 15-year-old self again. And this guy brings out all the little parts of me that I thought I had healed.
Yeah,
And I'm just wondering if you kind of came to know some of those parts of yourself that came through in this relationship. And, now that you are in a place of containment, how did you, how do you see those parts now, or how do you work with those parts now?
beautiful question. Yeah, there's nothing better than being in a relationship, and it doesn't have to even be a romantic relationship, just being in a friendship, a familial relationship. It's nothing like that to bring up your stuff, your
Mm,
your things, the parts of you that are wounded, that need attention, that need love, that need care, that need understanding, that need compassion. It's such a great teacher. It's such a great teacher. And every relationship that I've had has given that to me, but my ability to be aware enough to see that and to know that has only grown over time. Like my
mm,
self-awareness and my ability to look at what we're talking about is much more keenly focused now than it was when I was in my 30s, when I had my last long-term relationship before I met my husband. And I think that just comes with time and age and experience. Now, as far as the parts of myself that I discover and along that journey, it's been a wonderful experience of making peace with those parts of myself, because hating any part of myself is not going to get me anywhere. I
mm,
think that there's enough out in the world that projects self-hate or discontent with self. There's enough of that out there being projected out, being projected from out to in. And it's important that for me that I don't pile that onto myself even more. And I think my recovery has taught me a lot about acceptance and learning to accept parts of me that are just parts of me, and that aren't going to change, or the change will be slow and very incremental.
Mm-hmm.
And so I must be patient. But I feel as though there's so many parts of myself that are really good, and positive. And it has a lot to do with perspective and perception.
Mm-hmm.
It's how I view myself, how I view my superpowers, right? Are they for good, or are they for bad? But I think it's about my perception of myself. And I think relationships are just a wonderful playground to learn about that. You're not going to learn all that stuff sitting by yourself in your apartment without interactions with others. There's only so much you can do, I think, on your own. And I think people need people. We are meant to be social. We are meant to be connected. We are meant to have these relationships that bring out different parts of ourselves, and that sometimes elevate us, and sometimes can draw us in a different direction, and just make us feel.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I love that. Yeah, I have a friend that always says, when I'm in the Himalayas and meditating in the mountains with the yogis, I'm so enlightened. Like, I'm on fire. I want to see you enlightened when you're with your family or in your close relationships, right? And that's the real lesson. That's the real enlightenment, I think. And you're right, we do need each other. And I think in what I hear you say is that there's a lot of acceptance in the way you are seeing yourself, the way you're seeing your past relationships, and the way you've made peace and kind of brought yourself into that state of containment.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my teachers, Dr. Swoboda, always says, you have to always catch up with reality, because if you do not accept reality is going to catch up with you. And it's going to be at the moment that you were hoping the universe would give you a break. That is the moment reality is going to catch up with you.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
I know, he's so funny and brilliant that way, but it's like, that's always at the back of my mind. It's like, here we are. For whatever reason, we have to learn these lessons. We have to accept that this is where we are in our life right now, whatever is happening, and accept it. And once there is acceptance, what we call prana starts flowing. And you call shi or ki. This life force starts flowing. And when the life force starts flowing, Ayurveda says we are nature. We're just we're just a little microcosm of the macrocosm of the universe. And so in this place of being nature, once prana starts flowing, our bodies heal. Our mind knows how to heal. It's like we're not stopping it anymore. Illness, disease, and stuckness all comes from that feeling of not accepting and just being so stuck up in wherever we're stuck. And then once that goes, and that's what I feel like I see in your movements. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit, like, I feel like a thought comes to you and it's very intuitive to me. Like when I see your videos on Instagram or whatever else, it's like, oh, this emotion comes to me or this thought comes to me, and to digest it, I'm going to move. And it's just watching that, I can see that prana move with you. And I'm just wondering if that's something that, how do you do that? Is that a tool you use for recovery? Are there any other tools or habits that you've created from this recovery? Because I know that you were saying, recovery can have different shapes and forms, and maybe it's evolving as you evolved. The process of recovery is evolving. So if you can tell us a little bit about these tools that you're using, and if our listeners can kind of get some tips of how they can do that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, movement has always been a part of my life. Like my joke is that I came out of my mother's womb dancing. And some of my earliest memories of me dancing around the living room or twirling around like Wonder Woman, because I loved Wonder Woman as a child. So I was always very expressive in a physical way. It's hard to get me to sit still. And so through my life, I've been able to channel that into various things, and dance was a big part. That was my first love, really. And what I appreciate about this period of my life is how dance has come back, because I retired from my professional dance career many years ago. I think 2009 I retired, but I retired in a very abrupt way after doing a long-running show on Broadway for 8 years or so. I was just like, I'm done. I'm burnt out. I'm done. But the dance was still moving within me, but didn't have a way to be expressed. And this experience, I think, around just the healing that's happening for me in my life around the things that I've mentioned earlier, movement has been just a vital part of it. And at first it was just me dancing in my house, in the kitchen, in the yard. And then I began to film them, and I began to share them, and people were responding to that. And then suddenly something told me to start speaking as I dance, as a way to process what I've been thinking about, things that my mind has been circling around over and over. Or if I have a particular insight, I want to dive into it a little bit deeper, and I want to share it with other people. And I intuitively knew that it's something that's going to connect me with other people, because people are going to relate to what I'm sharing, because it's oh so human, it's oh so universal. And it's been incredibly healing for me to do my work, and for what you saw and responded to, the dance videos. It's been a bit of a game changer for me, because of the kind of self-expression I'm able to do, and how it's impacted people, and how it's inspired other people to start dancing themselves. I love when people tell me that, oh, you make me want to dance, or I realize how little I dance or how little I move. And what I want people to know is that we're all dancers. I just happen to have gone to school for it and was paid for it, but we're all dancers. We can all move our bodies intuitively, express ourselves, and that's really our medicine. And I think historically, I think from an anthropological point of view, dance has been a part of many cultures around the world for the millennia. But in modern times, we've moved away from dance. We've moved away from that kind of expression. Are we only relegated to weddings and not funerals, but like weddings and, going out to the bar or the club, but it's something that's accessible to us all the time. And it's something that is a healing tool, much like when animals experience something that maybe is impactful or shocking or traumatic. What do they do with it? They shake, they move to move the energy. What do? We freeze, or we get still, or what have you. So this has been important medicine for me, and it's been, I think, inspiring to other people. And so I always encourage people to move, whether it's dance or whether it's just going out for a walk. or doing yoga or Qigong or Pilates or riding your bike, swimming, whatever it is, to move your body.
Yeah.
Take deep breaths. When we are going through difficult times, when we're challenged by life circumstances, when we're learning something new for the first time, we tend to hold our breath. Breathe.
Yeah. It seems so simple, but
Mm-hmm.
yet we don't do it.
Yeah.
Somehow we have detached ourselves from that part of ourselves, because it is a part of ourselves. It's a natural part of ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think we're also sophisticated. I think the world that we live in is very sophisticated, and we're used to big ideas, big concepts. And what we're talking about is something that's so simple, and that we all do. We can't live without breathing, and it happens without us thinking about it. But when we pay attention to ourselves breathing, it's a game changer. It really, really is. So those are the movement, deep breathing. Meditation has been really important for me, but I'm one of those people that I'm able to drop into meditation more fully after I've moved my body in some way.
Right.
Like that's my entry point into it.
Yes.
And so we all have different ways of accessing that. That's what works for me. I think it's an important tool because it just gives us a time to be still and quiet and just reflect and be with our thoughts for a moment. And I know that's hard for a lot of people. A lot of people, that's really hard, and we spend a lot of time running from our thoughts. I think when I think back to the relationship, there were ways that I was running from my thoughts about how I was feeling or about the relationship. And I just got to a point where I couldn't run from those thoughts anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because the running from the thoughts makes your energy stuck and stagnant. But
Right.
walking into it with a sense of curiosity, courage, self-compassion, the energy, the prana, the chi, the ki is able to flow.
Absolutely. And that reminds me of the concept in Ayurveda. We talk about how the lymphatic system is the only system of the body that doesn't have an organ that moves it. And so things get heavy and stuck. And we have this concept of when we eat toxic foods, or we don't move, or we are in toxic situations, and we can't digest a situation or a food or a thought, it becomes ama, or toxins. And ama is this gooey, sticky material that kind of is like plaque. And it just goes into our arteries, and it goes into any space that it can find to get stuck and create stuckness in the body. And so when we are full of the toxins, we're full of the toxins. We can't be light. We can't think clearly. There's density in the body and in the mind. And I think movement is one of the only things that moves the lymphatic flow. And it also allows for that ama to digest, because you can't really cleanse the ama out of your body unless you digest it. And in the same way, our experiences that are hard or things happen that we do not understand, if we just try to push it away, it's like it gets stuck there. It's not going anywhere. And that's the whole science of somatic body therapy now, that we're realizing what Ayurveda has been saying for thousands of years, that these thoughts and emotions and experiences are not going away. They get stuck in our body somewhere, and then that becomes illness or disease down the road. And so to digest that, again, when we digest something by moving it, we create Shakti. Shakti is empowerment. Shakti is prana. Shakti is Shi, Ki. It's energy that fuels us, that allows for movement to happen. And when we don't move and digest that, it just becomes ama. It becomes toxins. It becomes stuckness in the body and the mind. And so that movement that you're so intuitively doing not only is moving the Shi and the Ki and creating prana flow, but it's also moving the lymphatic system, and there's no stuckness in the body. So like going back to the example of the river you gave, it's not like the river is always moving. The water is always moving. There's a big rock, it moves beside it or over top of it, or it will find a way. But as humans, we get to the rock and we're like, I'm just gonna go get stuck in this space and pretend I can't move and get stuck there. And that's where the problems come in, and it's just move forward, be that river. Let yourself flow with whatever experiences come your way, like finding your Shakti and strength to get through it.
Yeah, that's just so brilliant. I love hearing all that, and so many parallels between Ayurveda and Chinese medicine. Like when you said the ama,
Yes.
it made me think of, just in Chinese medicine, dampness is very similar. Really powerful what you said, and what comes to mind is whenever we're going through any kind of change or transformation, there's a lot of feelings that come up, and how do we just allow those feelings to express themselves and not censor ourselves, and just allow us to move through it? Allow it to move through. And that's the thing. I think emotional energy, which is energy, whether it's the density of your body, the physical energy, or your emotional energy, or your mental energy, your consciousness, it's all energy. And when we allow ourselves to experience our emotions and feel our feelings, it allows that water to flow, that energy to flow the way that it's supposed to. And also, it's important, I find, to not try to do everything all at once. Because any big change or transformation presents challenges, obstacles, logistical things, and we can think that we have to address it all at once in this moment. And that's not the best way to look at it. Like, what's happening right now? What's the next right thing that I need to do, take care of, address?
Right.
What's the next right thing for me to do to take care of myself in this? Do I need to take a nap? Do I need to eat something? Do I need to talk to someone?
Yeah, because that's where anxiety comes from, right? When we are like in this situation, we are like everything at once, just making that into smaller steps. And I love that you mentioned, what do I need right now? Like I do ask that for myself whenever I feel like my heart rate is going up and I'm like getting aggravated about something. I'm like, what is underneath this? What is it that I need at this moment? And I have 2 little ones, and the truth is that we're no different than these little ones who are either hungry or tired or thirsty, and we have those basic needs too. And sometimes we forget that. And it's often, what do I need at this moment? And then I'll take one next step. Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's the next right thing to do? And to just be with that and breathe through that.
Right. And often when you do that, it's like I find somehow the answers come. Like when you're stuck and you don't know where to go next, but you surrender and you allow that water to flow. And you're like, okay,
Mhm.
I guess I just know that this is not working. I'll just
Mhm.
flow with it and see what happens. And I find that the universe is so beautiful that way, where as soon as we allow it, it's there to lend a hand, to show you the next step or guide you through something that you
Mm.
need to be doing.
That's such a key point that you just mentioned, that the universe is always there to help and to guide. I think for a, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people have an interesting, sometimes very complicated relationship with themselves and the universe or God or whatever we feel is this energy that kind of governs everything. And some don't necessarily believe that things are happening for them, that life is just happening to them. And why is this
Mhm.
happening to me? It's a much more empowering thing to think about in the context of challenges or big changes in life, to think of it in a way that, how is this happening for me?
I
What
love that.
benefit or what am I going to gain from this that I might not be able to see right now, but at least am I open to how this is going to grow me in a way that I need. It's a big jump to make, and one might not experience or feel that immediately, because you have to go through all the different stages of grief and loss and all of that. But the sooner we can come around to being open to the possibility that this thing that's happened that maybe you didn't see coming, or it's your worst fear coming true, how can this possibly be a positive thing?
Right.
And you might not even have the answers to that question, but at least being open to the possibility is something that helps to move that energy.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Acceptance of reality. So I love everything that we talked about today, Stephen. And just want to mention and kind of like remind our listeners that we talked about getting getting stuck is from not accepting the reality. And by accepting the reality, we can let that river flow. And you can do that acceptance by movement, moving your body, doing something, going for a walk, dancing,
Mhm.
just allowing your body to move. Um and then from there you're kind of in the right direction, right? And
Mhm.
you're in the right direction, and you'll see that once you're going in the flow of the river, the water kind of pushes you towards the right direction. You're not fighting this
Right.
heavy water. um and just breathing, remembering to breathe.
Don't hold your
Oh
breath.
my gosh. Don't hold your breath. There
Mhm.
is magical things that can happen once you start breathing, my friends.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And starting kind of from where you are, like not trying to do everything at once.
Yeah.
Did I forget anything? Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I do. Just like what we're doing right now. This is
Mm,
community, connection, social support.
my gosh, I love that you said that. It's so important. So, so important.
Asking for help.
Yes.
And I've mentioned that quite a few times in my work to people, and it's always interesting, and it's also a little heartbreaking when people have had such bad experiences in their relationships with people, where they feel as though they can't trust because they've trusted people who weren't worthy of their trust,
Mm,
and they were hurt. And so this idea of reaching out to people, asking for help, is scary for some people. I think as we grow and develop and change, I think part of that development is gaining more discernment
mm,
as far as who you choose to trust and let in. Not not I'm going to trust people or I'm not going to trust people. It's just
right.
an understanding that you are going to trust people, but you're going to be discerning about who you trust and who you let in, and who you give the gift of yourself, your heart, your vulnerability to.
Mm-hmm.
We all
Wow.
do that with each other.
Absolutely. And it could be that, this other person that you're trying to trust and bring to your level of vibration, maybe they're on a different journey. Maybe they still have so many lessons to learn before they can be on that level of trust. And just not trying to force our kind of even love or connection or whatever we want to create with this other person when they're
Yeah.
not receptive to it or they're not on that level. And it's a real thing. I really have to coach my patients on that. A lot of women who trust, and then they go through really horrifying relationships, and they have to find themselves again and
Yeah.
find their own trust and security again. And
Yeah.
that's such a great point. And finding our people, like hashtag keeping good company.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I love what you just said. And that when we do step into the flow of bringing people into our life, then wonderful things can happen. And
Yes.
that process of finding people that we trust and healing from those old wounds, I think a big part of that healing is learning to trust others, learning to trust yourself, and also being willing to be honest about, in those difficult relationships, what was your part in that? What was your part in it, without beating yourself up, without
Without
making yourself a
judgment.
villain, just being able to identify those things about your personality and your character that you repeatedly do. You repeatedly go to the hardware store looking for oranges when they don't sell oranges at the hardware store. But if you keep going, you think they're going to suddenly have a special on them. That's a part that we play in our own journey, in our own experience, and sometimes in our own discomfort and misery. So just being able to lovingly be honest with ourselves about that, because we do play a part in our life, in our life story, in our life journey. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that example. I'm going to remember that. Don't go to the hardware store looking for oranges. My God, why? Why do I keep doing that?
It's another podcast to go over
I know,
exactly why we do
exactly.
those things. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a whole other story.
exactly. So true.
Mm,
So thank you so much, Stephen. This was wonderful, and so much information and so many great, heartfelt goodies that we can all learn from and use in our relationship to ourselves and those close relationships to us. And I just want people to know that they can find you. I love your YouTube channel. Oh my gosh.
thank you.
Because they're really beautifully done videos that are not even that long. So if people don't have a lot of time, I know that those movements, whether it's Qigong or it's Pilates or whatever movement that you teach, it in a very short time, it has a really huge effect. Especially, I always tell my patients, do it first thing in the morning and let that prana flow the rest of the day in your favor. If you're stuck in the morning, then the day kind of goes stuck. If you're flowing in the morning, the rest of the day goes well. So I will share that link with everyone under this podcast. And I'll share a link to your beautiful book as well that everyone can find. If anyone on your end, if they need some somatic healing or coaching or Ayurvedic healing, they can also find me on the podcast or on my website.
Yes.
And this has been such a great pleasure. And I'm sure that, we have so much going on that is kind of the same kind of healing, and I'm sure that we will talk again soon on new things that come up. And I'm looking forward to that.
Me too. Me as well. Thank you so much for this great conversation. And I also wanted to offer just to your listeners too, if you really are moved by what we talked about today, and you go to my YouTube page and my website, and you want to go a little bit deeper in your movement journey, you can always sign up for my membership community, SWE Studio. I'm offering a free 14-day trial, so you're more than welcome to join the community and all the movement medicine that it contains.
Amazing community, people. We call it
Yes.
Sangha community. So and it's free to try. So I'm gonna put that link down here too. The listeners can go there and sign up and start moving.
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Paris.